It's the state of the dungeon. It's a video that Rob does about his games. Yeah! Hail viewers, I am Korbrecht Cinderflume, Wizard of the Grand Order, here to give my testimony as to what we've been doing, which admittedly isn't a great deal at the moment. We're kinda between hot spots. Oh, don't get me wrong, it started hot. We finished off a nasty little bit of business in the arena with Hydra. I believe if you caught the last recording, we fought 2 other waves of creatures. This Hydra was the last. And it was quite a fight, but we prevailed. It turns out that the Hydra has the reputation of being more difficult to fight as you go on. Because if you hew off one of its heads, it grows 2 back in its place, and it lacks to defend itself with its heads. This is true. However, the way to get around that is by applying fire to the creature, which stops its regenerative powers so that you can get closer to killing it. Which we did. The first exchange of blows, we did not so much do any great damage to it with fire. It sidestepped my bonfire, and other attempts at attacking it mostly just arrived to chop off a few heads, or damage the neck so badly that it just regrew the heads anyway. So, soon we went from fighting a Hydra with 5 heads to one with 8. It was not looking so good. Our front line started to take a bit of a beating. That'll be Kythian and Belthagor were up there at the front, certainly. Malaric, kind of a bit, too. Myself and Vermilion mostly stayed behind and hit it. Vermilion was racking it with his Eldritch Bolts, which unfortunately were just knocking a head off. Belthagor coming in and charging it also tried to hit the body, but merely meant in lobbing off some heads. Eventually, one of us was smart and hit it with some alchemist fire. And after that, I hit it with my bonfire. And it was just bloody butchery from that point on, quite honestly. I flanked around, was getting ready to get my axe wet. And the others were all chopping into it when they could. Finally, to deliver a coup de grace, because I did not want to see my friends getting hit anymore, I stepped up, pulled out my flask of alchemist fire, cast catapult, appearing to throw it into the neck of the beast. And I may have punched through a few of its necks, scattering fiery rune in its wake. Well, that pretty much ended the Hydra right there. It breathed its last and we were victorious. There was a great applause, but quite honestly, I do not believe many people thought we'd be able to do it. But we accepted the accolades with grace, and as we walked out, the next group was ready to go out. They were from the rival guild, the Remnants of Gillian. So, they went out and we were able to watch the battle from our room. They were fighting a frightening creature called a frost salamander. That's a nasty beastie. It only took a few seconds before their bodies started hitting the ground. The thing breathed deadly cold into them. Once, twice, 3 times. Even their warriors were going down. The only one that it didn't catch in all of its blasts was their wizard. The wizard surrendered. Turns out they tried to make this battle safe by having attendant clerics around ready to cast Hold Monster at the earliest opportunity if the team is not up to snuff to fight the monster effectively. So they came pouring in to try to deliver aid to the fallen and to, well, to be able to try to hold the monster. But the monster wasn't having none of that. When we got out there to help, Vermilion rushed off ahead, fired a few bolts into the creature. The creature responded by diving down into the sand, coming up next to him and starting to savage him. Did not breathe on him, but only clawed him. Fortunately, at that time, one of the clerics got it off with a good hold monster spell. The thing was paralysed for a wee time, but I knew the creature might try to throw it off. While the clerics moved up and tried to revive the fallen amongst the group of the remnants, we moved up to butcher the creature. Knowing that it had to go down fast, I summoned my shadow blade, stabbed the thing. I delivered quite a bit of damage, but it was Malark ultimately who finished it off, with a brilliant blow that went right up through the jaw of the creature, ending it completely. So we proved that we're compassionate towards our rivals, that we're professional and competent in battle. We basically showed everything we didn't want to show off to the Cult of the Dragon and their sympathizers. Aye, that was perhaps ill-timed. But we triumphed and we won the purse, 1,000 gold pieces each, which is now happily residing in my spellbook, I'd like to admit. But yes, we had a good tussle with that. And then it came time to socialise. We met up with Bryn, who was ecstatic for us. That's probably going to get her a few new recruits, thinking that, you know, people from the Grand Order are that tough. We even got a thank you from Gillian, the rival to Bryn, who was still icy toward her, but is resplendent in the raiment of a cleric of Lathander, or perhaps a paladin. And he thanked all of us personally for the effort that we did in saving his men, which was very kind of him. It must have been a bitter taste in his mouth, congratulating a rival. But we accepted with grace. And then we met Othar, who is the regional leader of the Order of the Gauntlet. He was the one that we were primarily looking to impress with our prowess, as the Order of the Gauntlet care about results more so than intentions. He saw plenty of results, and he was impressed and wished to talk to us. The offer was also extended to that bard who keeps hanging around by us. But it was kind of him to invite us to the captain's table. It's an exclusive restaurant out by the docks. So we managed to go back and rest up and clean up, and I got another spell or two in my book. And we went to go and visit Othar to talk strategy. When we were there, it was a very fine place. The food was excellent. The drink was excellent. And we got light talk in before the room was cleared and we were able to discuss exactly what was going on. Othar came to us highly recommended as someone we wanted on our side. We found no reason to suspect otherwise. So we laid bare what we had discovered so far about the designs of the Cult of the Dragon. About the Mask of the Dragon Queen that we suspect they have, and how they are bringing it all to Waterdeep along with the other purloined things from the valley, from around Phandalin. He was very interested, of course, but we had no way of knowing that he was already tracking the Cult of the Dragon's exploits all up and down the Sword Coast. He showed us a map that was all pinned... Oh, I'm getting ahead of myself. After we had talked, he decided to take us into his confidence, so he had a wizard teleport us out of the captain's table to their stronghold. For purposes of security, I'm not going to tell you where that is. So Othar showed us his table with this wide map of the Sword Coast, and showed all the various pins where events had happened. People having their goods taken, burnings and attacks on towns. It painted a pretty grim picture. Certainly, the cult has been very, very active in purging the coast and pillaging as much as they could. A great deal of wealth was flowing through, and all going into the coffers of the cult. So, We offered what aid we could, gave them the information on where the hole from Fanaline was coming, down the river, and up and down into Waterdeep. We gave timetables and offered our advice on how to spring a trap for the cultists. Othar was not content to merely take intelligence from us. He consulted with wizards who were capable of tracking the various agents within the dragon cult, primarily their leader, who we had already identified, and got a good enough description that a mage was able to scry upon her. Aided by what we were able to tell them, they were able to track the half-black dragon Resmer, known to be a highly placed cultist in this dragon cult, up to her hidey hole in Castle Neritar. That's within the Mere of Dead Men, and it is a location that can be found. An ally of the Order of the Gauntlet, Laeral Silverhand, who I am passingly familiar with as one of the more beloved of the goddess of Mistra, surprisingly arrived and offered information as to where Neritar is and how we can get there. She is a very accomplished spellcaster, I must give her due, and she was an ally for such information. This is good. The more folk we have who are aware of this threat, the better and easier it will be for us. After this point, we had to make a decision what we were going to do. We could, of course, have stayed around in Waterdeep. I could have kept, scribing down spells from Bryn's library until I ran out of money again through all the ink I was spending on. And that would have pleased me to some extent, but this cult has got to be stopped. So instead, what we decided to do was the next day we were going to head out, and we were going to go along the road north, the High Road as it's called, which passes between Waterdeep and Neverwinter. Instead of going to Neverwinter, though, we were going to go through the Mere of Dead Men and see if we couldn't stop the cult at Castle Neritar. This is a very ambitious attack for relatively young adventurers as we are. We do know that Resmer is quite powerful, and that she is a cleric with powers granted to her by her demonic dragon goddess Tiamat. Fortunately, we have Kythian to stand against her, and I may be able to do a thing or two myself, but it is undoubted that she's going to have scores of dragon cultists around as well. We're going to have to be very careful about this. Very careful indeed. So we went out. Unfortunately, it was kind of a quiet that fell upon Belphegor and Vermilion. Actually, it was pleasantly quiet. Gave Malark and Kythian and myself a chance to kind of bond as a group better. I can appreciate some of Malark's skills a wee bit better. While Vermilion is quite accomplished at blasting things with eldritch force, Malark has a different touch. Stealthier, certainly. Better wit about for stealth. And of course, Kythian is a rock that you can base a group around. Strong in his faith and with powerful clerical abilities at this point. So, we were travelling along. We passed in several caravans and decided on the second night that we were going to camp along with a caravan. Kythian was feeling chatty, and he talked with the driver of the caravan to find out about the dangers that were coming up. Apparently, there's some hot activity. Kythian was previously warned that there are undead. What he is also aware of is that there are lizard folk and the frog-like bullywugs, who are also dangers along the near dead man. And also that there's a dragon. Another dragon, This one's called Black Death. It is an infamous dragon. It's been haunting the region for some 500 years, placing it at an adult. And it has a vile reputation for being, first of all, allied with the dragon cult, because it took part in several activities the cult has been around. It's also been marauding in the parts, so, your general villainy that evil dragons do. And it has a reputation for being exceptionally fast, able to cover vast distances in an illogically quick time. So there is some magic about. I do not know what yet, but it'll be interesting plumbing to the depths of this one. Although if we're lucky, we'll never meet the beastie. I do not relish another conflict with a dragon. At least not this early in our careers. There are several more abjuration spells I'd like to have memorized before we go after a dragon. And quite honestly, blacks are nasty. Nasty bits of business no matter what. Their powers of darkness and the deadly breath of acid are very, very dangerous in their home territory. So, we got that information from the drover and found out that they also were carrying goods from Celebon, the agent of both the Harpers for passing information that Othar values, as well as a contact for the Cult of the Dragon used for smuggling things into Waterdeep, and throughout the region, as it turns out. They were carrying such goods as they had, although Kythian did not believe that they were cultists, only agents of Celebon. We bid them good day the next day and travelled on. Eventually we came to the Caravan Stop. A caravan wagon. It is an inn along the high road. A fairly famous one is that it is one of the few places that a person can get a roof over their heads and a good drink along the long road north to Neverwinter. So we stayed there. It was interesting enough in that while we were there, we got a chance to toss off a few lesser coin, getting us fed, drink, and a roof over our heads. And we were approached by a gnome lass. She called herself Gemna, and she said that while we were not allies, our goals and hers were the same. She seemed to be surprised that we were there, openly moving about. Apparently, if you have done a few deeds and have a reputation, she didn't approve of that. The reason for that became somewhat obvious later. I, of course, did not want to have track with a person who offered to ally with us, although informally, without telling us who her employer was. I have nothing but distrust upon those who would attempt to gain confidence with no voucher for their character. And as far as I was concerned, she would take that knowledge that we were there and go and sell it to the highest bidder, which currently is almost certainly the Cult of the Dragon. So, she stormed off when I rebuffed her offer. Although I realized that she might have some information, and I was curious who her employer was, Malark was kind enough to go and, in his own way, attempt to get information out of her. I am grateful that I was not there to hear his attempts, but apparently he won some of her confidence, and she gave him a token, and then departed out of sight. He returned and showed us the token, and the token was that of the Black Network, the Santarem. Apparently she's an agent of theirs. The token that she gave him would allow him to send her a message via a winged serpent, one of their mechanisms. So we knew what her game was, and we were less than excited about it. I ne'er heard a good story about the Santarem, unless it served their purposes and cost good people in the end. But we bedded down easily enough. I warded each of our rooms with an alarm spell, and everything seemed to be just fine. Then I was awoken in the night to someone crying out in the street. Apparently someone had been murdered. I went down to do my due diligence in finding out what happened. And it had been a caravan guard who was stabbed through the jaw and up into the brain with a dagger. Very neat bit of work too. No doubt the person was a professional stabber. I would say, having travelled in the company of a pair of rogues, that the person had skills similar to what my comrades have. And, as it turned out, this person had been killed over by a wagon, also suspiciously containing a bunch of crates marked with Aiken Sullivan's mark. This was becoming so obvious that I needed to know what was inside. But I wasn't about to do it myself. I'm not made for stealth, you know. So instead I went and I roused Malark. And I told Malark it would be a good idea to find out what was in those crates that somebody might have been murdered over. And as it turned out, Malark was a little reticent to go until I offered a gift, a spell of invisibility. Now Malark could go wherever Malark pleased. So Malark set off, went into the wagon. I did not hear how it totally went, but Malark returned with a very valuable necklace that had been smuggled inside, hidden away, but Malark knows the way of smugglers, and was able to tell that those crates were stuffed full of treasure. This was not from the Fandolin lot. So, a great deal of wealth has been travelling through Celebon's caravans out into the Mere of Dead Men. Well, now we knew, and Malark had acquired a bit of extra currency, which is, I suspect, going to go to a good cause. Carthion went down as well, and basically provided good cover for Malark to escape unscathed, but didn't find a great deal of information, although the dead man was wearing a necklace with a token of the Cult of the Dragon, albeit an older one, back when they were very much into the Dracoliches. So we suspected that the dragon cult was involved, and it made sense. But there was naught we could do at the moment, short of, I don't know, maybe trying to take the caravan and all of the wealth, but that's really not the purpose of what we're doing here, counterintuitively, admittedly. We're trying to get to the head of this snake so we can cut it off. So we set off again out to the trade road north, and we eventually came to a point where they were making the new road that was to go through the Mere of Dead Men. Apparently a doomed venture, as the Mere is not interested in being girdled with a great road. So it's been fighting them as much as they've been trying to make it. And we went to that point and we were discussing amongst ourselves most heartily. Do we take the road? Or do we continue going about the mere dead men, following along its easternmost reaches, following the high road, which we already know is an excellent road and will make good time, and then travel along the northern border west until we come to a point where we can go south and make a direct line trek to Neratar. If we do that, we shave a day off of our travels, most likely. However, we miss opportunities of dealing with the dragon cult, and we have the advantage of a fairly good road from what they've made, piercing right up through the heart of the mere. Eventually, it'll take us to that roadhouse that we already know is filthy with cultists. And that might have some opportunities too, no doubt. But then, from then on, we'll have to go and go through the swamp to some extent. I don't deny I'm not looking forward to it. There's a reason why dwarves stay in the hills and in the mountains. Swamps are nasty places with all sorts of vermin, insects and whatnot to make your life miserable. But it's the life of an adventurer, eh? If I were a more powerful wizard, perhaps we'd have ways around it, but I must suffer and allow the experiences to drive me to get more powerful. Maybe Kythion has a bit of magic to make our trip more pleasant. Probably could have done for a druid or a ranger in our group. I'm not sure how good Belthagor is in swamps, being that he's a, underdark ranger, but maybe he'll have some ideas. So that is where we stand at the moment, having this discussion and waiting for the input from Belthagor and Vermilion. As of right now, I am voting for taking the road through the mere as much as possible. I like to be around the cultists that can be whittled down from the numbers. But we'll see what we can see. Until next time, I am Korbrecht Cinderflume, and may the Grand Order prosper and the Dragon Cult be smashed before us. Thank ye, and farewell, Korbrecht.